As many of you know, 1,000-layer potatoes are kind of what gave birth to this channel, and I think I've finally found the absolute perfect recipe for them. So while recently catching up on some of my favorite YouTube cooking channels, I saw Fallow. Fallow is a great restaurant in London, and I saw their recipe for 1,000-layer potatoes. They start with Maris Piper potatoes, very similar to our American russets, so we're going to use that, but then there are some differences. They use potato starch in it, they also don't peel the potatoes, and they also include layers of bacon. So we're going to try this recipe and see how amazing it is. I'm going to oven cook the bacon to start. We're just going to lay these out on a baking sheet and cook them in the oven around 400 degrees until they're mostly cooked. You don't want them too dark because they're going to cook more in the potato. We need to also then come in and make some browned butter. I used to use cream. They don't use anything like that to soak the potatoes first. So we're going to put some unsalted butter into a pan and just cook that over medium-ish heat. You want to see those bubbles, foam starting. Once you get to that point and the milk solids sink to the bottom, make sure they're not sticking and burning. Right there is as far as I want to take it because I see a little sticking happening. And then just drain this and leave this off to the side so that it can cool down. There's your bacon. You see one piece got a little too crispy, but the rest are kind of how I want them. That way they can cook more in the potato without overcooking and just disintegrating. And now it's time to mandolin some potatoes. I'm going to wear these gloves so I don't cut myself like I did over the summer. Here's that butter cooling off to the side. You can see that beautiful golden brown color, but yeah, I don't want to cut myself again. So we're going to be very meticulous here. The full-size potato is too big for the guard, so wear a nice cut-proof glove. The pieces you're looking for are nice and thin so you can see your finger through them. That first bit was a little too big. That's exactly what I'm looking for right there. If you wind up making them a little too thick, you may have issues with the layers sticking together, so just make sure you can see your fingers through them. That is the perfect thinness. And now we're going to do this for 3 or 4 potatoes. And once you have those all cut, we're going to add about a 1/4 cup of that brown butter mixture to the potatoes. We're going to add a little bit of salt, and then we're going to add around 50 grams of the cornstarch. Since we didn't wash these potatoes, they are very starchy to begin with, but adding that extra little bit of starch will make sure that as these cook and compress, you really have the best ability to have those layers stick together perfectly. And now we're just going to grab our loaf pan that we have a little bit of parchment paper inside of and start the process. We want to make sure we build a nice base bottom layer, and then what we're going to do is put in that first piece of bacon. I'm not going to make you watch this all because you've seen my original video where I show you the detailed steps of the layering, but we're going to lay this bacon kind of down the middle, leaving spaces, and that's what the potato starch is for. We're going to do a very light dusting here. I got a little heavy-handed with it, but that's going to allow the next layer of potatoes during the cooking process to really glue together and hold that bacon in place and not create kind of a layer that breaks apart when you cook. Potato starch is your friend here. Keep pushing down, adding a little starch between layers, and then build it as high as you want for your dish. I have about 3 different bacon layers in there. This thing's going to be probably about 1 inch thick. Once you get to that point, you're going to top it with a little more of that butter. He then pushes it down, really compresses it nicely. We're going to then fold over that grease-proof paper or parchment paper, throw on another baking sheet, and put this in the oven at around 290 degrees Fahrenheit for right around 2 hours. Here's what you're going to see after that 2-hour point. Check it occasionally, make sure it's not burning, but you want to see some caramelization happening, some nice browning. That is absolutely perfect. Now what we're going to do is the fun part. We're going to compress this with some weights. I threw in this one 8-pound weight and it kind of slid. It didn't sit evenly. You want very even pressure. So what I'm going to do is get 2 different weights. It's a 5-pound and a 3-pound, and that's going to have this sit a lot more evenly and flat. Give it a little push so you know it's sitting nice and flat and even, and throw that into your fridge for right around 12 hours. If you can go 24 hours, even better. But here's what we're looking at the next day. It is compressed. Everything's glued together. You can't even really feel the potatoes on the top separating. It's all one cohesive piece. If you need to separate this, run it under some hot water. If you got a creme brulee torch, just run around the outside and that will help that butter and grease loosen up, and then you'll be able to pop it right out. And there is your beautiful fallow style 1,000-layer potato. All that's left is to deep fry this, but look at how beautiful that is. Nothing's burnt. When I used the cream before, it always used to kind of look a little burnt, which I think was part of the issue, but we're going to cut the very edges off because when you're building it up in the pan, those always don't get enough potatoes and they have a little of a curl to them, but look at those layers. They're glued together perfectly. Once you cut that very end off, I'm going to start cutting 1/2-inch pieces. These are going to be what I cook, and then we're just going to trim the edges. You could cut the top and bottom too to give it a really nice flat, but these were already nice and perfect. And look at those layers. You can see the bacon in there. There's really no gaps of anything that should separate in the oil. And just continue cutting those. That's about that piece I like to serve. If you want them a little thinner, that's fine. They'll cook a little quicker as well. I also cut 2 thinner pieces as test runs just to see how they cooked. But here we're going to cook them up in some nice oil. Cook it however you want. If you want to shallow fry it in a pan, that's also totally fine. This is right around 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to drop those in. I like to move them around a little bit to make sure they're not sticking right in the beginning. We're going to cook these for somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes. If you have them in the freezer like I used to do, they're going to be probably 5 or 6 minutes. That's what we're looking for right there. You can see golden brown, nothing's burning, nothing's separating. These are staying together perfectly, which is exactly how fallow promised they would go. After around 4 minutes, we're going to pull these out and throw them onto a piece of paper towel just to drain excess oil. Another fallow addition that I never used to do is a little bit of honey. So since they're nice and hot, I just poured a drop of honey on, and I'm going to brush it across nice and evenly. And then I'm going to top that with a little bit of a thicker, flaky sea salt. And these are perfect. They're done. They're ready to eat. The most important thing, though, is how do they look? How do they taste? Looks, they look perfect. They're golden brown. They stuck together. They break apart nice and evenly. Obviously, the bacon in there is going to stop them from breaking perfectly down the middle like you like to see in a nice thumbnail. So I'm just going to cut one open here, and you can see those layers beautifully melded together. But let's give this a taste. And you guys know I've tried this with cream. I've tried it with cheese, so many other things. These are the best I've made by far. There's just something about, it's not even the bacon, it's the little bit of honey and the starch keeping them together. Perfect in time for Thanksgiving. This is a must-have side dish.